Yep, it's on slide 8.
Excellent.
Hello, hello. I think we're in now.
Yep, good. I see some
people coming in
already. Yep.
Wonderful. Maybe just because we just finished the previous session, we'll hold off until maybe like 17 after, or some odd number like that. Obviously, don't want to stand on ceremony too much, but just want to give people the opportunity to trickle in as needed. That was a great panel. Speaking for myself, at least, I really enjoyed being able to chat with the other folks, and it seems like we're all pretty aligned, which is nice. There's no mudslinging, which is always a lovely thing to have happen. Okay, Connor, are you seeing some people come in? I think that we can probably get things kicked off.
I think let's get started, and then people will trickle in. So
wonderful. Hi, everyone. You've met me if you're in the panel. My name's Lewis. I'm the VP of Product at ThinkData Works. Really appreciate you joining the panel. We've also got Connor, who's on the call. He's a solution engineer at ThinkData Works, and he's going to be doing the majority of the talking. I'm just going to kind of set the stage here. And a lot of the conversation so far has been about sort of data virtualization and data access. And we're going to use this time to really prop that up and talk a little bit more about how data is the missing piece in a lot of data catalogs. So if you want to go forward a slide to sort of what we're planning on doing here today, we're going to talk a little bit about the market and how it's changing. A lot of what's critical, what we see as critical for most of the companies that we talk to, based on several different persona types, how the trends are shifting, but also how they've kind of stayed the same. And then what defines or constitutes a next generation data catalog, the practical benefit of actually having data access within the data catalog, and then the benefits that you gain from doing so and the adoption criteria. So without taking too much time, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so I think that one of the things that Wayne mentioned right off the top that I think is really relevant is that a lot of people are planning or maybe not planning to adopt a data catalog, but we are seeing that investments in data are steadily going up year over year. You're sort of seeing fewer and fewer companies saying that they're data-driven despite emergence of new technologies. And then a low number of companies saying that they use make data-driven decisions most of the time. Some of the core things that have been identified that are problems is sort of lack of collaboration, and we've identified this a few times already today, between the technical side of the business and the business side of the business, which are getting further and further apart, not closer and closer together, it seems, year over year. There's a culture misalignment where it's sort of like anything data exists in one part, but in order to educate people and get them to start using data better, often people are being met with sort of fear of reprisals. Governance concerns are a massive issue as well. And then the result is that you can have this problem of one-off analysis. You have someone who creates a spreadsheet, creates a dashboard, but it's static and it's essentially printing off a PDF and handing it to someone. It's not really what we want to consider data-driven innovation at its best. If you want to move on past to the next slide. So, I mean, how do you, just generally speaking, support data innovation? I think that there's three major things that we want to talk about here. One is people need to be able to find data. They need to be able to discover it. They need to be able to search for it, and they need to be able to access it at the end of the day. Governance, it's a naughty word to some people. They don't like thinking about it, but really management is what makes metadata sing, and which is what leads to sort of discoverability and use. So management is critical, if not just for a compliance perspective, but also to make the actual data that you're using very usable. And those are important distinctions there as well. And then the final step is, once you've found what you're looking for and it is in a state where it can be used effectively, you need to make sure that you can pass it through to whatever downstream tool you're using, whether that's Power BI or any other BI toolkit, or if it's something more complex like a model. But at the end of the day, your APIs need to be there front and center to help you pass that data through, whether you're a data scientist or a business analyst. What's funny about this, if you look at sort of the market, is this has always been what's needed. Everyone has just needed more access to data. And there's been many different solutions to this over the past decade, but they're all essentially trying to solve the same problem. And it's been given a bunch of different names, but we haven't fully figured out why it hasn't been solved yet. And I think that what we're going to point towards in this session is how it does need to be solved. So if you look back to 2012 and the emergence of cloud, this was an idea mainly focused for IT users within a business and technical users about how sort of decentralizing technology was going to save costs and time. Eventually that coalesced in sort of around 2015 into the concept of data lakes. The idea there being, which is sort of laughable now, but at the time seemed really compelling, that if you put all your data in one place, and sort of shoot it with a lightning bolt, all of a sudden intelligent stuff is going to come out of it. That's not really the case. What we saw was that data lakes became very swampy. They became just this spot for dumping in a bunch of unstructured or structured data and then hoping that something came out of it. And that's when we had the term sort of data scientist really emerge, and it was called the sexiest job of the 20th century, and then it quickly became a janitorial task. Now, sort of as of today, people are talking about data fabrics and other terms like that, data meshes. And of course, data catalogs are a component of that. And that's going back from sort of that decentralized to centralized now to distributed once again. And this is really based on that sort of data analytics side of the business. And if you press next you'll see that there's been this focus, the shift in focus from the more technical side of the business to the business side of the business. And I think that that's where we're living now, which is anything that can sort of bridge that chasm. Next slide. So why, given that this has been a problem for 10 years, is it still a problem? Well, this is sort of a variation on the slide that Wayne showed. And I mean, this is a lot to digest here, but essentially what it's saying is that there's an evolution to any successful data strategy that goes through several steps. And the problem for a lot of companies is that they start at step 1 or 2 and want to get to productization overnight. And it just doesn't work that way, because you can't develop a data marketplace and you can't start monetizing your data and you can't start sort of using your data internally in a really robust way until you've gone through the steps of making sure that it is sort of able to be found, able to be used, able to be accessed. And so as you move up this chart, you see that there's different tools that come along with it. And I think that this is a helpful slide or graph to help people sort of pinpoint where they're at. And what we're really focused in on is this process in the state of data culture between implementing and sustaining that culture and getting it to a place of automation and productization. And so in the first stage, which is sort of just, I have no idea what I'm doing, that's just all about getting data in. The next stage, exploring, that's where you have a data warehouse, maybe some BI tools, that's all about getting data out. The next thing that happens, which is the really painful transition for a lot of people, is they get data in and they sort of get data out, but they don't have a way of really sustaining that process and turning it into something that's self-driving. And that's where a data catalog, data virtualization, and those tools really help the process. So, and from our perspective, where we really started out was as a sort of external distributor data marketplace. And we built the data catalog to support us in that journey. So it really is in our DNA as a company to help people get through that ramp. Next slide. So just to reiterate again, traditional data catalogs, Wayne's already talked about it, we talked about it again, but IT focused, closed systems, primarily data dictionaries and metadata management. That's the thing that they're really focused on. When you move to a next gen data catalog, so you can just run through these pretty quickly, everyone who needs data, open system with some governance, with governance sort of as critical to that, because if you're going to open up the system, then role-based access control, persona type needs to be involved. And then you've got, in addition to the data dictionary, you're also looking at things like data health, data quality, data observability, which only come when you are actually accessing data through the catalog. And that's the really big one, is you move from a metadata only solution to a data management and data access solution as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Connor here, who's now going to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of what constitutes that data catalog. Connor?
Yeah, thanks, Lou. So Lou set the table for us here. My goal is to really dig into the practical components of what happens when you get data into the catalog. This is really based on our discussions with a wide variety of organizations, the challenges they're experiencing with their existing processes, and how data in the catalog can kind of revolutionize those processes. We talked about traditional versus next gen data catalogs. So I wanted to start by framing a workflow that might exist today that a traditional data catalog is definitely helping with. They're definitely improving the situation for these organizations. But then I'm going to show how we can take it a bit of a step further. So with the traditional data catalog, and when I should define what I mean by a traditional data catalog here. So I'm talking about a catalog that is able to scan and pull metadata from a wide variety of sources. It probably has some capability to harvest technical metadata and do some data quality analysis on the underlying data. So when I say traditional data catalog, I'm talking about a catalog that has metadata, has a search function, it has data quality. And when you're talking about let's say a data scientist or a data analyst workflow in conjunction with a traditional data catalog, they're going to use that. They're hopefully going to use that catalog to perform a search, to find some sort of asset that they need for a project that they're working on. Once they find that asset, there may be a separate workflow, and I'll kind of highlight this along so you see where I'm talking about in the process. But there's probably a separate there may be a workflow in the catalog, but there's probably a separate workflow for ticketing to be granted access to that data. There might be some lag time as database admins process those tickets and provide that access. They might be referencing the governance policies in the catalog at that point to make sure that that access is warranted. Once that access is granted, the data scientists, data analysts will evaluate the data. Now, I just want to point out I have a kind of a legend here. Any item I'm showing in pink, that's something that you could potentially do in the catalog versus everything else, which is actions outside of the catalog. Evaluation can occur in some part within the catalog. And what I mean by that is you're able to view technical metadata, understand the schema, the data types, maybe understand some lineage or some health monitoring, which provides context around this data and lets you evaluate if this is the actual data that you're looking for. But most users would say they're not certain if this is exactly the asset that they need for the project that they're working on until they've dug deeply into that data. And by deeply, I mean, if you're a Python user, you pulled it into a data frame, you've been kind of scanning through, browsing the data, understanding its various components, and then you can say, yeah, I'm ready to actually pull this into a project, and this asset will benefit the model that I've been working on, or the dashboard that I've been working on. Understanding the data is kind of a separate piece to evaluating the data. When we say understand, we're talking about that tribal knowledge within your company. Where did this data come from? Who generated it? Is this raw or processed data? And basically knowing its origins effectively and what it's been used for in the past within that company. Then you do your data prep. I won't dive into that, but you might be doing some joins and transforms. And I should point out each step along the way, as you're doing the evaluation, you're trying to understand this data, you might decide it's not a fit, and then you have to revert back to the catalog to search for a new asset. And as you prepare the data, you might realize, oh, actually, I need to combine this with some other assets to create the summary, the view that I'm looking for. So this is the workflow that I wanted to present that we're seeing a lot of organizations move through for a traditional data catalog. And so the question is, what happens when you actually bring data, the actual underlying data, into the catalog, and how does it improve this workflow? And so I'll jump to the next step, or to the next workflow, which is in a next-gen data catalog that's virtualizing data, federating data using an ETL so that you're actually able to sink your teeth into it within the catalog. This is a change you're going to experience, right? So we have the traditional catalog function of being able to search and find data, but all in the same platform. You can conduct most of the rest of the journey, right? So I can access the data if I've been already granted access, or I can request access to that data through the platform. I can evaluate the data in the platform because it's there, it's within the browser UI effectively, so that I'm able to scan through, maybe do some high level aggregate statistics on the data directly in the UI and confirm, yeah, this data is a fit for the project, the dashboard that I'm developing. I can understand the data because within that UI, there's discussion panes that are available. There's rating systems. There's data quality metrics that are available. And all of this allows me to really understand the health, the use cases for this data, and how we're going to, and that will inform how I'm going to put that to use. And then finally, I can prepare the data. So we have data in the catalog. We have integrations out of the catalog for that data. I can do joins. I can combine multiple assets and produce something net new. So we're able to, we talked about kind of doing more within the cataloging system. And now we've suddenly consolidated a bunch of different steps within one UI, one workflow that really kind of reduces the mental load of jumping between multiple different pieces of software or systems to complete this end-to-end evaluation. So with that being said, like what actually is the net result? What are some of the benefits that we're going to see from doing this? So with access to the data directly in the catalog, again, we're getting visibility without sacrificing security. So I don't want it to sound like by default everyone can find anything and see anything. That's not the way that this works. What you're doing is you're implementing your governance policies directly in the catalog. You're setting up shares of that data, redacting columns, filtering views. All of that should be done within the catalog UI so that people are only seeing and accessing data for which they have permission. And the great benefit here is you're not managing that permission across multiple sources or systems, right? So again, the consolidation is going to yield really great efficiency when it comes to the data discovery journey and the data access journey. So evaluating the data, this is all about trust, right? We often see this as being one of the alarm bells that data and analytics teams are ringing. When we talk to them, the problem is always, I've built some pipelines, I've built some workflows, I have a dashboard, but I'm constantly being questioned, where'd that data come from? What is it? And by having data in the catalog in a really friendly UI, you start inviting the business domain to that catalog, and they start seeing the data that you're working with, the lineage of that data in a really clean and kind of simple manner. And they convince themselves around, the trust, the origins of that data, and the resulting dashboards that you've produced. They're going to believe in the results that you're providing them, right? And that all really comes down to making it so that a technical user is able to federate this data, connect to it, and a non-technical user is able to just kind of search, point, and click within the catalog and find out exactly how you built that workflow, that pipeline, et cetera. And the final part is, and I actually kind of alluded to it on the previous slide, which is that data literacy component, understanding the data. So I've talked about the lineage piece. I've talked about being able to, with data in the catalog, being able to browse through it, being able to understand with each field, what are the various values that field can contain, what's the composition. All of that should be available within your catalog so that users are able to self-serve, understand exactly where this asset came from, what it entails, and gain trust in that asset. Let's move on. And then the final piece is the data prep. So, I mean, I think it's no secret that a lot of data analysts, data scientists spend a substantial amount of time on preparing data for use. With a data catalog that is actually pulling data through to be browsed within the catalog, that it's going through, it's either virtualized from a warehouse, it's being passed through an ETL so that it's ready for consumption. That definitely reduces the time on the analysts and in terms of reformatting, transformations, making sure that that data is consumption ready. It's consumption ready as soon as it hits the catalog. And then the greater advantages with a catalog UI that can filter that data down, redact columns. An analyst is able to quickly transform that data into the end product that they need within their dashboard in whatever BI toolkit that they're using. And the same goes for data scientists. So again, the goal here is to make it very user-friendly, to narrow down to the exact asset that you need to pull into your dashboard or model. The other piece is, because we're connecting to a wide array of sources, you're now able to do joins and transforms across those sources, and you don't need to, do extracts and loads and then transforms across a wide array of sources. You're kind of able to do that all in one spot. The real benefit here being just accelerating that time to insight. So a lot of organizations are investing a lot of money into their data teams. They're expecting results, and anytime that you're having to go to multiple sources, requesting access, using ticketing systems, that's just going to slow down your ability to move on with your work, connect to that data, pull it in, and develop something new that's actually going to have a meaningful impact within your organization. So I went through a lot there in terms of like the practical workflow component here. I definitely isolated this conversation to a very specific workflow. I think that there's a lot broader use cases in terms of having data that you could browse and really sink your teeth into within the catalog. But I wanted to make sure that the team or the audience here got a real feeling for a practical use case. The more kind of high level, like strategic component to this is really around integrating data so that it's easily accessible, providing governance in the same platform. So being able to deliver shares of that data, slice and dice it the way that you need to, so that users have access to appropriate data given your governance framework. And then adoption, right? If you do more in one application and people aren't having to bounce across, different UIs, different applications, different workflows, that's really going to enable adoption, right? The cognitive load of jumping, I think we all experience it, given just how many different solutions we all work in from a day-to-day basis. But if there's any way to consolidate those solutions, it just has a huge quality of life improvement to your data analysts, to your data scientists, because they're not having to bounce around as much effectively. Each new application, there's a learning curve. It takes time to understand. If you're able to consolidate that, you're just going to speed up your onboarding, your training, and then also your time to delivery effectively. I know we have a few minutes left. I haven't had a chance to look at chat. That is, in terms of presentation, all we had for today. But maybe we take a second to look at the chat, see if there's any questions. And
I've been busy responding to stuff in the chat, Connor. So I think we're doing okay there. Great conversation coming up about data profiling and data lineage, which I'd be an idiot if I didn't mention. We actually launched our lineage solution today. Data lineage, for a lot of people who have spent time looking at data catalogs in the past, they're probably aware of it. What we've seen in the market is that a lot of lineage solutions look great in demos and then kind of start to break in a production environment, citing something that we call internally a hairball effect. The hairball effect is if you have a knowledge graph where everything is related to everything else. If you try to plot that onto a sort of visualized frame, then all of a sudden you're just going to see too many relationships and it will be effectively unusable. So our lineage, which one of the questions that's come out in the chat is sort of, is it aimed more business users or technical users. There's also business lineage and technical lineage. It marries the two. It's very usable from a business perspective because what it really establishes and shows off very well is upstream and downstream dependencies specified to a specific data product or data set. So it helps you trace a chain, but it doesn't try to represent everything in the data catalog in one visual tool. The tool that we use to represent everything is the catalog itself and the catalog search, which actually shows the relationships between everything in the catalog in one place. When it comes to lineage, we really want that to be hyper specific and focused on the health of data pipelines so that people can look at them, de-risk, do impact analysis, all of that fun stuff.
So
I'm seeing some new
Wayne
messages.
just asked a question there, Lewis, and I can jump on this one. So Wayne was asking, is data virtualization for ingesting data and metadata or for querying data once people have found metadata about it? So it's both in our opinion. So we want to be able to, or what we do is we scan databases, collect all of the technical metadata that's available from those sources, present it in the platform so that it's searchable and discoverable. That means, schemas. It also means warehouse metadata. If we're talking about something in Snowflake or in BigQuery or Snowflake, for example, it'd be, what project this exists under, what data set this exists under. All of that information is being collected. And then you have the added benefit as you complete your discovery journey to query those databases directly through a cataloging platform like ours. So it's not just about collecting the metadata. It's about both. You need the metadata to enable search, but you also need to be able to query the underlying data with very little latency so that you're able to pull it directly into whatever model, project, dashboard that you're working on. Lou, feel free to add anything to that.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about our approach is since we have always had data in the catalog, first through sort of our custom ETL and more recently through data virtualization, which we rolled out a couple of years ago, and have just been iterating on since. Since data has always been a critical component of the catalog, we actually had to almost do things the reverse way, where a couple of years ago we had to realize that sometimes people only wanted the metadata. And so within the platform, there's ways of adjusting it. So some people will only see metadata, whereas other people can actually access the data sets. And that's actually done at sort of the role and permission-based level as well.
And one thing I just wanted to highlight there, because it was brought up by Wayne actually during the keynote address, which is once you set up a system like this where you're ingesting and virtualizing data into the platform, you have well curated metadata. So you have, business glossary, data dictionary. It becomes so simple to set up a marketplace and to be able to share that data both internally and externally, which just when we talk about the future of data cataloging and the revenue component tied to data, it really unlocks that component once you have a platform like this set up. Lou, you might be able to elaborate on that, but I know that that's a really key component. A lot of organizations we talk to are really focused on data exhaust and capitalizing on that data exhaust.
Yeah, I mean, with 1 minute left, we could do a history of how data marketplaces and data monetization has changed over the past couple of years. But I think that by virtue of the fact that we started in that space, we now know all the steps that are required to get to that outcome. And I think that one of the important things is that everyone wants to get there, but they're not always aware of all the steps you need to take in order to get there. And that's where we really excel at helping people move from that sustaining model into the more productization model. And all of the platform functionality that we've built for the past 8 years has been predicated on that, and those lessons learned.
Awesome. We had another question or two here. I know we're at time. We definitely could maybe contact these folks directly. I don't want to have us go over here and people miss out on the next session.
Yeah, we're also heading over to our innovation hub, I guess office hours type thing. So if anyone wants to come over and actually chat with us, we'd be more than happy to do that. We also do have a link to a demo video that we can point out. I don't know where it is, but I think someone else does. It should be in our office or our digital office.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so Padmanabhan, I'd suggest coming over to our booth. We can definitely talk about those constraints with integrations and really give you a clear-cut answer there. But yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. As we said, please join us at our booth. We'd be happy to really dig into some of these deeper questions and provide more context around how we approach this. So really appreciate the conversation.
See you at our booth.